today's Congressional Briefing on the weaponization of Hindu festivals to target Muslims in India. This is the second year in a row that two different times of celebration have coincided with each other, first being the Hindu festival of Ram Navami and the second being the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. But what should have been a time for peace and festivities has been overshadowed 2 years in a row by brutal Hindu supremacist mob violence, which is being directly encouraged by leaders from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party. Hindu far-right media blames Muslims for the violence, claiming that riots break out when Muslims attack Hindus during peaceful processions, but the evidence says otherwise. Beginning on March 29th, Hindu extremist mobs participating in processions for the Hindu festival of Ram Navami have systematically attacked Muslims along with their homes, businesses, and places of worship in at least 6 Indian states, including Maharashtra, West Bengal, Gujarat, Telangana, and Uttar Pradesh, and also the capital of Delhi. The descriptions of the violence are horrifying, and I'm only going to recount a few, but there are many more. In Bihar state, a young man was shot dead during a Ram Navami procession, while Muslim women reported that police officers broke into their homes, robbed them, and threatened to rape them. Teenagers participating in a different procession in Bihar beat a Muslim woman and smashed a Muslim teenager in the head with a rifle butt. In another procession, a mosque was set ablaze. In West Bengal, Hindu extremist mobs chanting Jai Shri Ram set fire to Muslim shops and vehicles, resulting in prolonged violence in a number of areas. In Gujarat, Hindu supremacists attacked a Muslim-majority area, stoning homes and a local mosque. And in one media report, Gujarat police forced down the door of a Muslim woman's home during iftar, tore off her clothes, and attempted to rape her while beating her husband. In Telangana, Hindu extremist leader T. Raja Singh called on Hindu crowds to kill Muslims, saying, quote, "You Muslims are half-cut," meaning circumcised. Then he added, "We will cut you fully." The worst part is that all of these are familiar scenes now. Last April, when Ram Navami also coincided with Ramadan, mosques and places of worship across India were set ablaze, and I'm sure our audience has seen at least some of the images there of mobs of hundreds of Hindu extremists chanting Jai Shri Ram in front of mosques, Muslim-owned shops being targeted with arson. And almost immediately after this destruction, Muslims were further punished as BJP-led state governments began bulldozing Muslim-owned homes and businesses. India's Muslims are still reeling from last year's Ram Navami violence, and this year's violence has only compounded the tensions and the fear that they're facing. The weaponization of Hindu festivals to violently attack Muslim women, children, and men is becoming a disturbing recurrence, and today we'll be diving deeper into the topic of why this happens and who's responsible. I'm joined today by a stellar panel of guests, but before I introduce them, first I'd like to start off with, as usual, our news video on what happened this past week in India.
A Muslim man was lynched to death by a Hindu extremist mob in BJP-ruled Madhya Pradesh state under the accusation that he had stolen chickpeas. The victim, Sheikh Firoz, was found unconscious in a drainage channel with his body covered in stab wounds and bruises. An 11-year-old Muslim boy was stripped and forced to shout Hindu religious slogans by 3 Hindu minors in Madhya Pradesh state. The Hindu minors also filmed the disturbing incident and circulated it on social media.
वैसे आना आए और मारना शुरू कर दिया, तो औरतें भी लड़कियां भी बचाने पड़ी, तो उनके ऊपर भी मार करिए.
Muslim worshippers, including women and children, were brutally attacked with canes by a Hindu mob while they were offering prayers inside of a mosque in BJP-ruled Haryana state. At least 9 Muslims have been hospitalized with injuries. Police arrested 70 people, including Hindu supremacist BJP leaders, in connection with a recent outbreak of anti-Muslim violence in Jharkhand state. Hindu supremacist mobs had thrown stones at a Muslim and set fire to shops owned by Muslims. Officials in the capital city of Delhi demolished an Islamic seminary that catered mostly to underprivileged Muslim children. Portions of a 250-year-old mosque were also razed. A Muslim high school student died by suicide in Rajasthan state after being unable to bear the harassment and Islamophobic abuse from his teachers. The victim, Razak, died on January 31st, but no action has been taken against the teachers who abused him to the point of suicide. Hindu militant leader Monu Manesar, who was listed as the prime accused in a brutal mob lynching case until Hindu supremacists threatened police into dropping his name, has reappeared on social media with even more violent anti-Muslim content. India's federal probe agency has registered a case against BBC India for an alleged foreign exchange violation, months after the BBC broadcasted a documentary that takes a critical look at Prime Minister Narendra Modi's role in the 2002 anti-Muslim massacres in Gujarat state.
That was this week's news roundup out of India. And as you can see, the headlines continue to be concerning and alarming. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists now to talk about the issue of Hindu supremacist mob violence during Ram Navami processions. Beginning with our first speaker, Mr. Shaheen Abdullah, a multimedia journalist at Maktub Media. You can check out his work online. He is also an independent researcher who has had his work published in the Washington Post, Al Jazeera English, and Vice, among many others. Shaheen ji, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Shall I start?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. See, one thing striking about this roundup that you have made is that you picked out 10 stories, and the actual figure is like much larger than that. You have missed out Orissa, where there's violence happening. In Chhattisgarh, 3 people were killed. There was this one Hindu man also got killed, and a father-son duo was also killed. So even if you try to quantify the whole news about hate crimes and anti-Muslim crimes happening in India, all the resources would exhaust, because the amount of violence that is happening in each state, and it varies from one state to another. So it is hard to keep up with what is happening in this country, actually, and it has been tiring, and it has been boggling the mind of a lot of like-minded journalists, not just Muslim journalists, but all sort of journalists have been trying to keep up with what is happening in each state. If you look at what is happening in Maharashtra itself, that is a horrific thing. The way right after the government was switched and toppled by the BJP and the new BJP Shiv Sena alliance, the entire ecosystem, or the entire way the law and order worked in that state changed, and it became more and more violent toward Muslims. And what we understand is from January to February, there has been around 45 marches, anti-Muslim marches. Other sort of crimes that is happening in Maharashtra, including the Ram Navami violence that happened in Aurangabad. Now it's not Aurangabad. People even in Aurangabad, they don't know the actual new name. Sometimes they're trying to figure out what is the name. They also forget this name. So what is happening in India right now, when you talk about only the religious, the violence during Ram Navami and Hanuman Jayanti, it has happened before also in India. During religious processions, there has been violence. But in last year and this year, there's a pattern that you can see in every state. If you go there, or if you try to get in touch with the people who have been victimized or who has been targeted through this violence, they're going to tell you the same exact story. There was a procession that was not supposed to come on on that way. They would come. They would pass by any of this mosque or any of the religious institutions. They would stop in front of the religious institution. They actually wait for a call for prayer, where Muslims come and assemble in that institution or in this building, and they make sure that they are heckled. Sometimes they attack them with the arms that they are carrying. There will be pistols, there will be swords. Several video contents that we have reviewed have seen that a lot of people have been using pistols in these positions. They would heckle, they would unleash violence against Muslims who have gathered for the prayer. And oftentimes, and this has been happening quite a lot of times, that it has been normalized right now, they would pelt stones. And due to the quantity of this violence, pelting stone is a normalized thing in India right now. If this mosque has been raised down, or mosque has been set on fire, it becomes a news. Pelting is normal. It's fine. It's okay. This is the country where you have to negotiate and find, okay, this doesn't make into a news right now. This is normal for the country because it has been happening in multiplied into 30 or 40 times within a time span of months. It would happen in this country. So it is like, okay, pelting is fine. Now people have been heckled. People have been injured, and that has happened. And by the evening, most of the Shobha Yatra, which happens during the Ram Navami or the Hanuman Jayanti, they would end by 4. Then the police come into action. They would come outside with their batons and other kind of things that they use for law enforcement. They raid in Gujarat. They call it combing. So they would go to each Muslim houses, get inside. They would barge in. They would get inside. There wouldn't be any, at times there would be, if you take each state, it may varies, but even though there is women police with them, female police personnel with them, most of the time it is done by the male cops. They would go inside, they would heckle, they would, and so in Vadodara, what happened this year is that, because the police is coming in such a huge number, women were trying to stop them. And this is quite something that human will do, because, there's a violent attacker who is going to come inside, and they're not talking to you, even though it's a private property, and there should be some sort of a communication happening. They're not ready to do that. So when the woman stops their children from being detained, police is calling them, they are also attackers. And 5 women from the house from a house were picked up by the police, and they have got bail only after a week. So what we are seeing in India right now is that there's something that I did a video sort of a short video feature on what happened in Vadodara, and the people were repeatedly saying that they went after the ladies so that they could sort of make sure that how far they can humiliate this community, because this is sort of a patriarchal norm also, attacking the woman makes it much humiliating than being killed or heckled. For the Muslim community, it is a pride how they take it. I'm not going into which is good or bad, but when the woman is attacked, when the children is attacked, the minors have been detained in several states, what happens is that the dynamics change. The community feels morally down, and beyond confronting the people, perpetrators of the violence, they are tangled in this legal battle to find to release the people who have been arbitrary or illegally detained by the police. So all their resources goes into freeing the innocents, or making sure that there's a legal system, there's a law and order in place, and judicial proceedings in place. And and leaving all these resources for this procedure every time. Time and again, what happens in India is that the perpetrators, the people who are behind the violence, they get away. They don't just get away. They would be in the public sphere making comments about, you know, how violently they attack Muslims, and they would be making all these claims of how they are going to do it again and again. And this happens, and that's why we would say that the law, whatsoever, if there is a law and order in the country, which should be, you know, respected, even though it has a lot of biases, it still have to have some sort of an accountability. What happened in Jahangirpuri this year in Delhi is also one of the example. They had no permission for the violence. They had no permission for the Shobha Yatra, the rally that was taken out in Jahangirpur, in northeastern side of Delhi. This is Delhi you're talking about. This is the center of everything that is happening in the country. And they anyway had this march happening. They defied all these restrictions that was, you know, nobody's charged. Police just went through. They were like, okay with it. They're fine with it. They wouldn't stop. The police wouldn't stop. All the forces that was there in the Delhi at that point of time felt like, okay, we would negotiate with these people. But it never happens with the Muslims. And because it never happens to Muslims, we have to say, when we take stock of everything that is happening in the country, we have to understand and we have to have a collective notion that, okay, this community in India are being persecuted. That's 10 minutes. I'm done. Safa, thank you so much.
Perfect timing. And thank you so much for just breaking down the issue in so much detail and really laying it out for our audience, how widespread and how uncomfortably normalized this has become. Thank you so much, Shaheen ji, and thank you for all the reporting that you continue to do. Our next speaker is Kavita Srivastava, who is a full-time human rights activist working to protect people's democratic and constitutional rights and to work towards justice in instances of violations of those rights. For 2 decades, Kavita ji has been promoting collectively and with and social other groups nonviolent ways of ensuring justice to survivors of atrocities committed due to gender, class, caste, religious group, or nationality. She is also the National Secretary of the Union for Civil Liberties. Kavita ji, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And of course, I've heard Shaheen, who has been very gentle in his presentation. I must say that, Shaheen, I think you know he's also in the Supreme Court with the hate speech case. And just to share that despite Supreme Court orders that the police must monitor hate speech in the Maharashtra rallies, which the Sakal Hindu Samaj, one particular group, was taking out. They took out 50 such rallies. The police actually did nothing. So now it's also very clear that unless the Supreme Court will come down very heavily, till now the Supreme Court has not. Maybe Shaheen may have something to tell us that future point maybe, but they couldn't care less. Hardly were cases lodged. They did not even arrest people. So in a way, why are we concerned about this? Because the road to genocide goes to precisely what we're witnessing in India. Mass hate crimes. In huge numbers, people are allowed to come out and say, abuse. Last year in Rajasthan, we had such rallies. Now, they actually have proper videos where they're singing the hate. And it's just horrible what they end up doing. Some of those videos we've heard, and the massive riot that we had, actually, it was not even a riot. It was the Hindu rallyists who attacked Muslims in Karoli. In a similar rally, festival rally of, the Ram Navami, we saw precisely some of these things where such loud music was being played that the person who wears a cap, topi wala sir jhuka ke, Jai Shri Ram bolega. The person who wears a topi, covers his head, is now going to say Jai Shri Ram. And they want to play it in front of the mosque. They want to play it in front of the Muslim colonies. You see, no festival, now no Hindu festival happens without troubling Muslims, as if that has become part of, the protocol of a festival, the protocol of all these festivals. Firstly, there were hardly mobilizations or any of these. These are very individual festivals. But of late, these mobilizations had started. And mobilizations are unprecedented. Now, like the example that Shaheen was giving about Bihar Sharif, about 50,000 people gathered and the police was not even sufficiently there, like last year in Karoli. Although we would still insist that what happened to your intelligence? Was there complete failure of your intelligence? So while on the one hand, it's happening all over. I mean, it's happening in every North Indian state. This is happening. In the southern states, it's not happening, but in every North Indian state, it is happening. And also Maharashtra, Karnataka, Orissa, it's happening in all these states. And let us get it straight that it is being done with impunity. There's nobody who's stopping them. After last year, this year, some sort of act of the government of India, if they really wanted, they could have taken out a circular, even if it was a name, prevent rallies from getting disruptive, or humiliating Muslims or hate speech. No such thing. In fact, we wrote also. We said, again, these very festivities are coming, but they're not bothered. They actually, see, they are the promoters of all this. They're giving the impunity. So in a way, hate crime is at its peak. And what I want to say, what is very disturbing, I think it has become autonomous. I don't think there is a central diktat. So we think that there is a central line. So tomorrow, when they will say, no, now don't do it, people will stop. No such thing. I think it's gone beyond the control of the RSS. I think it has gone beyond. And it's voluntarily people are coming. I mean, so brutal this society has become. And with the kind of bloodlust that Indian news channels are kind of, putting out every day, every hour, you want more and more, that you end up from these hate rallies where you burn mosques, where you'll put a flag, where you'll desecrate mosques. You go on to something happen on the 15th, where in front of the complete media, a live broadcast, the 3 shooters come and kill 2 people who have 100 cases against them, who have to be in the most protective environment. The police should have, with armed police should have been around them. They should have been taken straight to the hospital gate, and they're just shot at and killed. 15 times, 15 bullets are fired, and the police does nothing to even fire back. So you can imagine that the entire Muslim community is gradually become the monster, that even eliminating them makes no difference. People are very happy, like they did it for Atiq and Ashraf. I'm bringing this in, that actually even this mode is getting slightly outdated. Something more and more. We don't know what will be next. So I think we are in a very, very bad time. I mean, I have started saying personally, after Junaid and the 2 boys who were picked up from Rajasthan and killed in the name of the cow, we went and did the Nasir. They were picked up and burned alive. And who were they picked up by? By the special cow protection task force which works in the police. And after that, you showed the photograph of Monu Manesar. If it was just that, it was enough. It's not just about Monu Manesar. now getting on to more hate speech on Facebook. What he had earlier was very bad. What he's doing now is, the same. The point is that the Rajasthan police could not pick up these people from Haryana. There was absolute protection of the Haryana police and local people. They actually put boards outside. We will not allow Rajasthan police to enter into a village and arrest. Until now, something like this happens on early hours of 15th Feb. Till now, only 3 people are arrested, and actually they have to arrest 40. 40 were involved, but 8 were directly involved. So as if it's an enemy country, Rajasthan, Haryana, we have a contiguous border. It's like as if going to arrest somebody, the police has very clearly said, we cannot help Rajasthan police. And obviously the local police has to help you to arrest somebody who's there. So actually, I think what I've started saying, that we are not on the edge of genocide. The genocide has started. Till now, we used to have lynching. That was to create fear. But now it's gone beyond lynching. What happened with Junaid and Nasir is they have been, the way they were picked up and killed. I think now in Mewat, it has started. In some other parts also, it will start and started. So things are very serious, very, very, very serious. Yes, the festival violence and there are so many festivals. Every date can be converted into a festivity of this god or that god. They want 365 days. They can be taking out these rallies and be going to the mosques and shouting the hate slogans and burning and desecrating. The point is that what is it that we should be doing? I think we have to move beyond description, because it's very, very, very evident. And since we're talking on an international platform, I feel very clearly that the US individual senators may be interested, but by and large, the US Congress is not interested in stopping India. They have geopolitical strategic issues for which they will not stop India. I mean, look at the kind of hate mails that the Californian senator received on her proposal, on her bill, or whatever you call it in California, to pass about caste discrimination. Rallies are okay. You have a democratic right. You take out a rally. Well, kind of hate mails. The Hindu hate is becoming global. We saw it in Leicester. So again, it was to do with a mosque and Hindu temple and this, that. So it's a very, very serious situation. I think we have to stop. We have to stop the genocide. That is the whole point. Otherwise, there's no point discussing this. We, in our own way, in our own country, our young friends like Shaheen, Sharjeel, and some others are working so hard, Some of us are also trying our best to do what we can. But we know it that issuing statements are not helping out at all. Till, instance, in Rajasthan, this time they could stop the hate rallies because they just did a lot of preventive arrests. They did both, a lot of peace talks and a lot of preventive arrests. That day, we set up a control room for Hanuman Jayanti and Ram Navami. We thought there'll be a lot of violence. So it's not that you cannot use it, but you don't want to use the police machinery. You don't want to stop it. So when state is part of this whole violence and it has become autonomous, we've got to, not just move heaven and earth. And we really have to keep our judiciary. Actually, what is left with us is only the judiciary, and we've got to really, really hammer it in people's mobilization for peace. And there we fail. We are hardly able to get thousands and thousands. Why should Muslims just be mobilizing? Have the Hindus seized? I was born in a Hindu family. I'm not necessarily a practicing Hindu, but where are the Hindus who should be worried that your children, everybody is getting into this hate environment? So I would feel that this briefing makes sense if really there's some sort of international pressure, which we till now feel there isn't, because the problem is only multiplying. The hate is only multiplying. So I think that while we can have discussions and share, but probably it is left to us Indians to actually determine our own fate and change whatever we can, and not the way that a group of Muslims went, some very senior Muslims went and talked to the RSS chief that what if we hand over Gyan Vapi Masjid? What if we Janmabhoomi? Will Muslims' life be safe? That is not the way to be doing it. That you go and negotiate, with the tiger himself, who is causing all the killing, So that is not the way out. But the situation is desperate. It is. Thank you so much for some of these thoughts that I have tried to share. But I think the point is, what is it that we do in this country? So maybe you should say, your question should be, what are you doing to stop it? The description is there. I mean, we are facing it. And that gives another approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kavita ji, especially for pointing out that the US government and the people, especially here in the United States, do have a big responsibility to raise awareness and say what the people, civic society in India is already saying very loudly and clearly. So thank you so much for your time today. I'd like to turn over now to Asif Mujtaba, who is an alumnus of Aligarh Muslim University and IIT Delhi. He is the founder and CEO of Miles to Smile Foundation. You might have seen their campaigns online on social media. This is a not-for-profit organization that has been working extensively for the relief and rehabilitation of the victims of communal violence, mob lynchings, and communal demolitions. He was also one of the co-organizers of the historic Shaheen Bagh protests against the discriminatory Anti-Muslim Citizenship Amendment Act in 2019. Asif ji, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. And thank you for hosting this very important talk today. I must thank the previous speakers because they spoke so well, trying to chart out all these events that's happening. I speak today in the capacity of leading an organization. We primarily work with victims of criminal violence. Just the starting of this month, I was there at Bihar Sharif during the curfew. I almost met all the victims there. Last year, I was there at this time in Khargon, a state in Madhya Pradesh. There was a riot and there was a curfew. I visited all the victims and the places that were destroyed, initially by the Hindutva mob and later by the state, accusing Muslims of pelting stones. I went to the Karoli, where a violence erupted in the name of celebrating the Hindu Navars, and it turned out bloody violent, and the Muslim shops were looted and burned. I went to Himmatnagar in Gujarat. Our team worked at Uttarakhand, we worked at Bihar, we worked at number of states. So if you talk about the criminalization or the turning out of a Hindu festival and the oppression of Muslims, I think we need to see it in three different perspectives. From the perspective of the Hindu or the Hindutva, from the perspective of a Muslim whose neighborhood is getting trouble, whose mosques are being attacked, or who is forced to listen to these provocative slogans. And third, and most importantly, that people miss out is from the perspective of the Indian state. Right. So if you see these three different perspectives, and if you look at the way the festivals have been criminalized, I would not say it's just entirely related to Ram Navami. It's not entirely related to Hindu Navash or Hanuman Jayanti. If you look at the 1946 series of riots against Muslims in Bihar and West Bengal, or the riots before, it was because of the Eid al-Azha. I mean, they had criminalized Eid al-Azha, and the Hindutva made it an event where Muslims were butchered. I think hundreds of villages were uprooted, thousands of people got killed. Right. So it has to be seen in three different perspectives because all these perspectives had evolved differently over the years. If you look at from the perspective of a Hindutva, the criminalization or a polarization or the turning out of the festival as an oppressive tool for Muslims has got them political gains. In 1979, in a city called Jamshedpur, on the garb of Ram Navami rallies, a large anti-Muslim right happened. And it led to the strengthening of the BJP in that state. In 1967, the right, if you look at Sholapur in Maharashtra, if you look at the 1970 right at another place in Maharashtra, so all these rights from the perspective of Hindutva, they have strengthened their political ideologies and they have given them electoral benefits. If you look at the whole Babri Masjid issue and how it was, taken down and how they were, on the garb of, creating a new temple, rights happening across the country, it gave a stronghold to BJP. So from the perspective of Hindutva, the polarization of Hindu festivals and turning it to be a nightmare for Indian Muslim has given them political gains. And that's why in all these states, even if you look at Madhya Pradesh, Muslims are a meager 6 to 7%. Right, a 7% of the population does not make much electoral difference. But they want to satisfy the 93% of the majority that, look, we are oppressing Muslims. So one thing is very common from the Hindutva perspective, that it gives them a legitimacy or a political gain. If you look at the perspective of Muslims, we went to all these sites which have been mentioned in the previous talks by the previous speakers. If you look at one thing, that Hindu mob came, forced themselves to these Muslim ghettos, chanted provocative slogans. So that was stage one. A rally that was not allowed, going through the thick Muslim locality at the time of their prayers, raising provocative slogans. If these slogans are provocative enough to raise your temperature, they enter into stage two. Like the Kavita ma'am previously said that, Topi wala sar jhuka ke Jai Shri Ram bolega. This is nothing as compared to what kind of Hindutva pop music is, fomenting against Muslims. There's a whole literature available about this. If you get provoked, it's okay. If you don't get, if the Muslim community don't get provoked, they try to force themselves in desecrating the religious places of worship or even the cemeteries. In Bihar Sharif, the place where the violence started, it started from a cemetery, an old Muslim Qabristan, where local objected to this Hindu, people celebrating, 15,000 of them in the Ram Navami rally, objected to them going over these, graves. They didn't listen to it, and the scuffle and everything started. They tried forcing their religious flags atop of mosques or mazars, right? If you don't get provoked by these songs, we will come and provoke you by desecrating your places of worship. They will come and try to force these saffron flags, post it at the mosque or mazars. If you get provoked enough, if you don't get provoked even by the two act, they will try a reason to pay stone to. We went to a place, Himmatnagar in Gujarat. When these two previous aspects failed, they tried another reason and they started manhandling the Muslim, the old people, like 70, 80 years old. And then it resulted into violence. It does not matter with what patience a Muslim participates. They have a different, I call it a very venomous graded plan with the Hindutva. If you get provoked by songs, it's okay. If you don't get, we'll try putting flags. If you get provoked by the putting of flags on the religious place, it's okay. Even if you don't, they will find another reason to start pelting stone with. So it does not matter. Even if the Muslim population, like if you look at Madhya Pradesh, even the 6% of the population gives their 100% efforts in maintaining peace, that's just the 6%. 94% has to be counted in. If you look at the other states, even if the Muslims give their 100%, it is just 20% of the national average, right? So the change has to come from the Hindu side and not from the Muslim side, because they are testing patience in whatever capacity. It does not matter in what way Muslim community behaves, they will be subjected to the series of violence. The third and most interesting would be the perspective of the state. You see, the Indian Penal Code was enacted in 1860. Lord Macaulay did it. at that time, 1860, a clause was inserted called 153, which has a provision for 6 years imprisonment if you give certain provocative speeches. And that could be extended to 1 year if that speech results into violence. So at that time of the British, back in 1860, it was a problem. A religious event turning to be a nightmare for a minority, it had been there. If you look at the documents, I mean, the British document about all the rights happening in the country, the oldest one you will find will be 1809, the Banaras right. If you look at I was reading these documents, and I found a striking similarity in what used to happen in 1800s or 1900s. What exactly happened in 1809 at Banaras, I found the same pattern happening in Madhya Pradesh in 2022. I found the same pattern happened in Delhi, in Gujarat, in Rajasthan, and I observed the same pattern that happened this year in Bihar. The police says, the British official document says that Hindu police, they left their ranks, and then they participated in the violence against Muslims. So this policemen leaving their ranks and taking sides of a Hindutva mob in unleashing violence on Muslims, if you think it was very, strange feature in 2020 anti-Muslim Delhi pogrom, if you take it as a very strange feature in 2022 or 2023 riots, it had been there. But what changes the perspective of the state? The British documented it all, and the British had the court of inquiry, the police inquiry commissions, and they had these officials removed from the duty. In some of the cases, grievous provisions or penal provisions were also applied. If you look at Indian perspective over these 7 decades of our independence, it is the state that is playing the most venomous role. I went to Bihar Sharif. People said to me that they already told the commissioner of the police and the SP that there are chances of the violence, because a day before, the local MLA called for a meeting, and then they planned for something heinous. They asked the SP for adequate police measures. And you would be surprised to know the number of the police that deployed. Outside a thick Muslim locality where the violence had the maximum effort, the devastation, outside the library, which was gutted to the fire, more than 100 years old library, there were 5 policemen, an old police guy, very old one, and the 4 trainee women. Muslims of the area told me that when the violence started, they tried and their best to save these police women, the trainee police women first, and they tried saving their mosque. So the first thing that role of state comes is they don't listen to serious concerns of the cases from the Muslim side, that if they keep on asking for the security measures are very inadequate. Madhya Pradesh, when the violence started at Talab Chowk, I was there, the police measure was inadequate. So the very first thing that they do is, before the violence starts, they deploy inadequate number of the police force. At the time of violence, police force take the side of the Hindutva writers. In Bihar, in Madhya Pradesh, in Rajasthan, and all these places, one thing is common, that the police acted in the biased approach, in the biased criminal approach. There are a number of commissions of inquiry, a number of committees have been formed for police reforms, and the largest one would be Prakash Verma Committee. But the irony is, all these committees talked about the police reforms. All these commissions of inquiry talked about the active role of the police in perpetrators of crime against Muslims. In 1987, in Hashimpura, the Provincial Assistant Constabulary, the PSC of UP, they shot dead Muslim youth and threw them in the river. Muslims were killed by the police in Malyana, and all these police have now been, they have been set free by the court, right? So the police needs a reform. Basically, they need more Muslim policemen to be there for adequate measures and all. So from the perspective of the state, when it comes to before violence, the police force are inadequate. When it comes to at the moment of violence, they take side of Hindutva writers, and they ensure that maximum loss of life and property is inflicted on Muslims. But the most striking part is what Muslims suffer at the moment of violence is nothing as compared to what they suffer afterward. We work with at least thousands of the women whose male members have been they had been kept. But Shaheen said they call a name called combing. In the garb of combing, they pick all the Muslim youths in that area. I met a family last time. The mother was blind and she had 4 kids. Her husband was picked with no charges at all. You will find juveniles at the age of 13 years, 14 years, 15 years picked up. So in the name of combing, all these Muslim youths will be picked up and the women will be troubled. I mean, I went to Bihar, met few women. They said that the police at 3 a.m. in the morning, they climbed the roof through ladder. They broke the door of the roof. They got in, picked male members and brutally thrashed the Muslim women. Even they gave them the threat to rape and all. So what Muslim women suffer at the hands of the police after the violence is brutal. It cannot be described in words. And then there is a legal battle, which is essentially biased against Muslims. So in the principle of natural justice, no one is a criminal until proven innocent, but Muslims are always guilty until they prove their innocence by themselves. So in terms of the eye of the state, especially the judiciary, they have a very biased approach against Muslims. So for all these Muslims whose house has been pelted, whose mosques have been burnt, whose shops have been vandalized and looted and burnt, he has been picked up and then he has to fight a legal battle. Just last week, a guy who was picked on false cases in Sandhwa at Madhya Pradesh, we tried helping the family with relief and rehabilitation. I got a call from the family that Asifbhai, we got released. After bloody 1 year, this guy is a Congress corporator and he had no role in the violence. He wasn't there, but his house, his shop was demolished and he was kept in jail for a year, and then he finally got a bail. So Muslims are getting a lot of trouble. Like police and the machineries of the state, they have finally colluded. And in toto, in the larger perspective, but like what Kavita ma'am said, that the genocide is not yet to start. It has already started. A Muslim kid of 13-year-old, kidnapped, forced naked, and forced to chant Hindu slogans by Hindu kids of 13 and 14 years. This should be seen as an alarming situation. Some months back, a Muslim was killed in Madhya Pradesh, and the killer said, "I thought he's a Muslim and I killed him." So Muslim name and identity is enough to be lynched in New India. Our houses and mosques and shops are enough to be looted and vandalized and burnt in New India. Our male members and juveniles are enough to be picked on the wrong charges and kept incarcerated for years in the New India. So I wouldn't say it's a new India because the phenomena is nothing new. So what we are seeing is nothing new phenomena. Actually, it has been happening in the country for decades. It's happening now. And all the political parties have exploited it. I won't blame the Congress. I won't blame the BJP at the center now, because this, if you look at the roots of it, the roots were, sowed at the time of the Congress. And the most striking of all is the justice part. So I was invited to speak at one of the events in Bangalore, where the topic was harmony. And I told them the harmony comes with peace of mind, and peace of mind comes with the justice. Muslims of India have never been given justice. our ex-members of the parliament are murdered in the broad daylight. Our houses and the mosques and shops are getting demolished. Our mosques and minarets are desecrated. Even our cemeteries are desecrated. Muslims are lynched on the pretext of looking like Muslim or having a Muslim name, on the pretext of cow, on any false pretext, right? And in none of the cases, we have been given justice. So it was duty of the state to ensure justice, and the state has totally failed. In all the cases I told, 1967 Solapur, 1970 in Maharashtra, the 79 in Jamshedpur, the 1989 in Bhagalpur, the 83 of Nelly massacre, the 1987, the Hashimpura, the Malyana, the Meerut, and the Delhi and all. I mean, I could name hundreds of these cases, but thousands of even more Muslims were mercilessly butchered and burned. In none of the cases, the perpetrators have given the punishment that they deserve. So being a Muslim in India is not a religious condition. It is an existential condition, right? And that should worry us all. Thank you for this great talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asif ji, especially for talking about how this is like a decades-long problem. That's nothing new. And also for addressing the point that this is the beginning of a genocide has already begun. And thank you for all the work you do to support the victims of this violence. I would like to turn it now to our final speaker. We are joined today by Sharjeel Osmani, an Indian Muslim activist who came to the forefront of the anti-CAA protests as a speaker and student leader. Sharjeel ji, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh, all of you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Okay. So let me begin by saying that we are living in India is the perfect example of an excellently functional, lawless democracy. We have an entire generation of Muslim youths who's only thinking of mere survival, not about pursuing dreams, securing future, making promises and love and life and everything else. The only concern is survival. And not since Hitler's time has the world witnessed this kind of disparity of dignity, respect, and recognition. And also, one of the truths that I have come to realize, and I hope the world sees it sooner than later, is that we are, the world has not seen this kind of mass radicalization ever, in terms of population, the sheer numbers. With regards to weaponizing the Hindu festivals, it is a well-known fact in Uttar Pradesh, where I belong to, is that on the eve of Holi, a week before Holi, the Hindu festival called Holi, all the major mosques in all cities of UP are covered with trampoline and sheets. And the administration, the district administrations themselves do it now, so as to avoid any violence that might be caused if these people try to damage mosques and throw stones and colors and things like that. And it has been going on since I've grown up saying that, and it's still continuing, and so much so it's so normalized that we have sort of it has sort of become a tradition, ritual, that okay, Holi is coming, the masjid committee would come together and they'll talk to the contractor to put sheets to cover the mosque so that the mosques are not desecrated by these men. And instead of checking on the people who might do this, the administration usually tells the Muslims to cover their mosques. And this has been going on for a while, so it's not specific to Ram Navami, but the god Ram has been central to the political imagination of the RSS. And in the recent memory of this country, in until early 1960s, this Ram Navami Yatra was often organized by the local temples, and it was only limited to the in and around the temple area, and it was a small festive celebration. But by the time 1965 and something, the RSS took over. They decided that they will organize these festivals. And in 1967, the first major such position by the name Shobha Yatra was organized in Nagpur of Maharashtra, which is also the sort of Hindutva capital of India. The RSS had their headquarters in that city. And it was a new thing because thousands of men were given free go to march around the entire city with weapons, singing Islamophobic songs and hurling chants that were often Islamophobic and anti-Muslim and provocative, calling upon violence, etc., etc. Asif bhai just mentioned the Jamshedpur violence passingly. In North India, I think there's not been a worse incident than the Jamshedpur riot of the academia calls it riot. It was a one-sided attack, which is it was in 1979 when the violence broke out, and the Tata Memorial Hospital and Red Cross Society decided to move out the women and children from the riot hit areas. So they arranged 2 buses to ferry out these women, Muslim women and children, from the violence hit area to a shelter nearby city. The buses were stopped by a mob, a Hindu mob, in front of a police station, and was set upon fire. 127 Muslim women and children were burnt alive in a matter of half an hour. I was in Jamshedpur until day before for the violence this year, and I met one of the 2 people who were able to come out alive from that fire in that bus. He was his name is Irshad. They call him Ikki there. He was a 12-year-old at that time. His mother, his sister, and a total of 25 of his relatives from his mother's side and his father's side died in that one incident on the same night in front of his eyes. And the then Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, after the violence was over, visited that camp and even talked to him also, this child, because it called for a good press, a 12-year-old who could speak and would talk about it to the Prime Minister. So the pictures were taken, things, promises were made, but all the FIRs that were made in those cases, all the FIRs, and remember it was Bihar at that time, it was Jharkhand was not a state back then. Karpuri Thakur's government was there. He is also a great secular messiah in India's anti-Hindutva popular culture. It was his government back then. All the FIRs subsequently died. No arrests were made. And no justice was served, not even compensation. And this has been the track record of, I would say, Indira Gandhi and the Congress government in general. In the Nelly massacre, she promised justice. She also promised compensation, set up a government inquiry. The inquiry committee, they gave up its report to the government. The report was never made public. To this day, it has not been made public. There were more than 130 FIRs no arrests made, all the FIRs died. And in the name of compensation, they paid 2,500 Indian rupees, which would be less than, I think, $5 in US, to the families of people who died. 2,500 rupees as compensation. And so what I'm trying to say is that this is not a very recent phenomena. This is not something that now it is not even planned as such. The local population themselves have taken this upon themselves to do this. This very minimal role of the RSS and Bajrang Dal and organizations like these in these areas. This time in Jharkhand, last week, when the violence of Ram Navami violence happened in Jharkhand, the person who was named as the prime accused is Abhay Singh. He is a local BJP leader. His grandfather was the prime accused in the 1979 violence. Again, a BJP leader. So this has been going on, and they have been let go by the government, who promises to provide justice to the Muslim minorities. So, and it's not just Jamshedpur. Another violence happened in 1968 in the same city. Aligarh had riots on eve of Hindu festivals in 1963, 67, 71, 74, 77, 78, 81, 83, all the way until 2000. And so much so that it became the third most riot-prone city in UP. And it is not a city, and it has been a city, it has been in the state that has been ruled by the Congress government all the way until late 80s, and then subsequent secular governments. So what is more terrifying with regards to these violence is, and it has happened before also, and it's very well documented. Iqbal Ahmed Ansari has done a humongous task of documenting all these instances of violence in North India. And all the academics who study communalism in India tend to refer to his documentation alone. That is the only source, and that's the primary source. In these violences, in Aligarh, in Mau, in Hashimpur, Maliana, Muradabad, in Bhagalpur, all these violences, first the Muslim citizens are attacked. They are unprovoked. They are attacked, and when the violence ends, the police comes in, and then they again attack. So it's a double attack every single time in every single of these cities. In Jamshedpur, as we speak, 35 Muslims have been arrested for participating in the riot. It's the media, the police, the state, and even the Indian academia, they portray it as a clash between two parties, which it is not. It has never been. And you can find it on hundreds of testimonies have come up on this, but we tend to call it riots or clash. Now what has happened is that, as we saw in Bihar Sharif, and I went to Bihar Sharif this time, earlier this month, the yatra was, the Shobha Yatra by Bajrang Dal was announced weeks before. They had put up posters as if it was election season. The entire city was covered with posters that the rally is going to happen on this day. And there was, on the day of the event, there was no police on the roads to be seen. So much so that even in normal days of normal festival seasons like Eid or the Shahra or any other season, you'll see more police on the road just for precautionary measures. Here, during the time of this rally, there were a total of four police officers, the lowest of the rank, with lathis in their hand, not even guns. 3 of them were women, 1 was handicapped, against a mob of 50,000. So either the Bihar state government, which is led by RJD and JDU, was complicit in this, or they simply don't care because we aren't going to go anywhere in terms of a voting group. 4 people. And so what happens is when police is not in between and people are surrounded from all sides, as it happened in Bihar Sharif, you have to try to defend your life. You don't want to get burnt alive or killed. And so you have to do everything that you can to save your life. And then this defense that the Muslim groups do to protect themselves, to save their lives, is then portrayed as a clash. And then arrests are made. And the arrests are made in a very peculiar manner, and it has been documented in the case of Khargon last year. So what they do is they take out voting sheets, voting rolls of people who are going to vote, eligible voters in any area. So they take a voting rolls from the Muslim area and they'll book all the Muslims. They cross-check later if that Muslim is in the city or he is working in Saudi Arabia as a truck driver. They check that later. So we see a lot of loopholes in the FIR itself, that the person was not even in the country and his name appears in the FIR. So this happens only because they take all the names. Anybody who is below 60 and above 12 is eligible to be booked by the police. In Bihar, several minors have been arrested. Rehan, I met his grandfather. He was sleeping in his house at 12 o'clock. The police came. They arrested all the male members of this family, including this boy who was 12. In Khargon, 18 minors were arrested. One of them even tried to commit suicide in the jail for minors, juvenile justice jail, because he was fed up with the torture that was being done on him by the police. He tried to commit suicide, and when he came out, he had a 7-inch mark on his neck. The other children who were sleeping in the same cell, they woke up and saw this guy is trying to hang himself, and they shouted, tried, and they protected his life. This has been going on for a while, and as we talk about judiciary, I have said this before. I tend to be been accused of exaggerating situations before, but I'll say this again, that the judiciary is equally complicit. It's not. It is in no way a last resort, as we are trying to tell ourselves, and it is only because we say this only because even if we don't even have judiciary, then the situation is going to be very grim. So we also do this to console ourselves that judiciary is there. But the truth is, in this this could be the funniest example if it was not so tragic, is that the Khargon police went and served a notice to a local businessman. His name is Aslam Pahalwan. He has a factory, they deal in bakery items. So he has a factory. They gave a notice to him and they demolished his factory then and there. Later, they realized that this notice was for some other Aslam Pahalwan who also has his business. So the next day they came and they demolished the other factory also. Both of these guys went to the court, and the court simply doesn't listen to these cases. So same happened in the case of Afrin Fatima's son. The notice was served on Javed Muhammad. The property belonged to her mother. So you are serving the notice to the wrong party, and then again you are demolishing the house. The ADA was formed in 2008. The Allahabad Development Authority was formed in 2008. The house was created in the house was constructed in 2000, 8 years before the creation of ADA. And the ADS of the notice on the basis that they have not taken permission before. They have not gotten clearance from ADA for constructing this house. The house was constructed 8 years before this body was created. And when the case went to court, it has been shelved by the judges. Even the NSA petition of Arfin's father, the 8 separate benches have shifted that case. They simply don't listen to these cases because the court knows that if we are to listen to these cases, there's no way that we are not going to go against the government. We have to, because there's no law whatsoever, no story whatsoever that can justify their demolitions. So they don't listen all the way from the lower courts to the Supreme Court. There are numerous petitions. I'm also a party in several of them. They don't listen to these cases. They have not. They'll talk about all other things that is not directly clashing with the government, such as say environmental rights. Go and get a petition, a very progressive petition, favor order from the Supreme Court on say environmental right or say pollution, even sexual minorities' rights, and so on and so forth. But where it is clashing with the government or its program, its agenda, they don't take up the cases. So that is a true reality, and we need to think about what we can do outside and beyond rational and legal means of protest. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sharjilji. Thank you to all of our panelists for breaking down the issue in such a comprehensive way. I know it's not an easy topic to talk about, and it's so broad that, as Shaheenji, you mentioned, we could talk about this for hours and all our resources would be exhausted. We still wouldn't finish talking about all the hate crimes that Muslims are going through in India right now. So thank you again to our panelists. I know we're a little bit over time. I know it's late for a lot of, first of all, everyone in India, also some other our panelists as well. But I do have one question that I'd like to pose from the Q&A, and I think it's a very important question. Any one of you can take it up. I know a couple of you mentioned that the effort now needs to come from the Hindu community as the majority community to take action, because the Muslim community on its own cannot stop these hate crimes from occurring, even though they are, as Asifji mentioned, they are doing their best to not be provoked. But, you know, when your life is in danger, what else are you going to do? So one of our commenters has asked, like, let's see, as a fellow Hindu, I can't even talk/convince my other Hindu friends how this needs to be stopped. I am thinking about how to overcome this. Please let me know your thoughts on this. So I'd like to open it up to our panelists. Would any one of you like to answer that question?
I think the burden of thinking about how to, how to convince your other family friends should not come on us, because we have a lot of things happening in our hand. You're not talking about, one or two issues like, schedules. When schedule speaks, there are a few things that actually reminds me. One, the whole idea of the North Star that India celebrated last 2 weeks ago, like, when the New Indian Express the Indian Express editor said, judiciary is the North Star, saying in front of the CGI, Muslims never ever have seen this North Star. Our clouds have been, our sky has been clouded for years, and even though, like, Kavita ma'am said this, and I never wanted it to be in the public, but it's already out there. Even though I'm a petitioner in the hate speech that is happening, and every month we come out with a petition trying to make at least the slightest inconvenience for the people who are doing all these things. It doesn't matter, what the government appointed Solicitor General is doing is, he's attacking me. He's saying that the petitioner is from Kerala, petitioner is that, petitioner is doing this. So what he has done the whole time is he's trying to, investigate who is me and what am I doing. Even though there's a whole lot of evidence about, what is happening in the country and, what people are doing. So that burden should not come on us, and that is the benchmark. The burden of convincing non-Hindu friends is not our stake as well. And really, the simple point is that any religious festivals of Hindu, in any of these religious festivals of Hindus, Muslims want to voluntarily help you, but if not, we have no stake in this. And why are you dragging us into this? That is the whole point that everybody's asking. Why have we dragged into what is supposed to be your religious festival? And what is it? What is there for us? We want to help you. We want to give you water. We want to help you. Share the joy. But otherwise, don't drag us into this. This is what most of the people who is struggling to do. Yeah.
Can I come in?
Of course.
I really want to tell some of my friends, and we must discuss it. This is not the platform. I think if we don't learn to distinguish between the changing character of the Indian state, of what it was in the 70s and what it is today, we will really miss the point. Because today, even the horrible Jamshedpur riot, which had 125 people roasted, had about 35 Hindus in that whole situation. I'm not trying to do a match. All I'm trying to say that the Muslims have always got it worse. I mean, we've done our whole history ourselves. We've looked at since the 19th century. However, there was still not a consensus of people that this happened, of the Hindu community, number one. There was an absolute consensus or a majority consensus then, as we're seeing it now. The police force was communal, but there was still a large section which was not communal. Let's not say everything was 100%, then we wouldn't have proceeded 50 years at all. See, let's understand today when we are standing on the threshold of a Hindu Rashtra. I mean, sometimes I feel we are already a Hindu Rashtra without changing a word here and there. Yet, I would still, appeal to my friends and my younger friends. I really, really, I really admire the courage and really care for you that even if there is a ray of hope in that damn judiciary, we have to convert it into our opportunity, and we have to keep trying. We have to keep trying because at the end of the day, see, just now they have arrested activists. Who are they going to arrest next? Human rights lawyers. They're going to arrest them. They want to finish. This is the one institution that Hindutva is worried. You had this orchestrated debate that the parliament is sovereign and parliament supremacy is above the judiciary, simply because they cannot take even one little question. They cannot take even one little question. Please understand, you had the Vice President of India, the Law Minister and others all orchestrating this thing. That how dare, I mean, if the judiciary was completely gone, then they wouldn't have tried their best to get into selections. The judges selection. They want to be in it. The executive wants to be in it. And secondly, they're saying, if we have to change the constitution of India, then Keshavanand Bharti, which says that the basic structure of the constitution cannot be changed. And what is the basic structure of the constitution? Which is the preamble, cannot be changed. They said no. The whole debate was that if the Indian Parliament wants, they can do it. Now, even that little bit of the judiciary, they are unable to take. So I would still humbly request my friend, see the changing character of the Indian state. Don't see it as the same. If you're going to see it in one brush, then we're really not going to understand the gravity that is today. We never talked of genocide earlier in the 70s and the 80s. I remember Delhi. I remember we never talked of genocide. Yes, there were killings. I mean, I've studied so many riots. I've gone all over the country. I was not like an Asghar Ali engineer who was like
ma'am.
Yeah. So this is one point that I want to make, number one. Sorry. Asif, we can keep our difference of opinion. You do
No,
respond.
no, I'm just saying one thing. Don't.
And I want to do it as
don't expect. No. I'm saying
no,
just
no.
one
So
thing.
I'm coming to that
see,
point.
rather than the change in constitutional framework coming from the executive or legislature of the day, I am expecting it to come from the judiciary. 1973. Yeah, listen. When Keshavan Bharati judgment came, Indira Gandhi enacted another 15-member judges bench judge to overrule, and it is bound to come. So you have high hopes on judiciary. I don't have.
Listen, but Asif, we have to fight. I mean, none of us have given up the fight. And as I said, even if there is that little blade of grass which we can grow and cross the turbulent seas, we will not let it go. I'm not saying the judiciary is in the best situation, but I will not give it up. And we know it because we even go. I want to just say one small thing, because that question about the Hindu. Now, I'm born. I would really like to come in here, and definitely the burden, the greater burden is on the majority community, because it is the majority community which has a complete consensus of a Hindu Rashtra, of finishing the constitution, of Hindu supremacy. And it's not just Hindu supremacy, it's Brahminical supremacy, all that, Brahminical male supremacy, whatever. Definitely the burden is much more on larger sections of the Hindu community, which does not mean that the Muslim community should not even come out. Something I feel that during the CNRC, what happened with the way the peaceful protest, which was later they tried to criminalize, the quiet way in which women came and sat, and it had the support of everybody, showed a way forward, and that really frightened the Indian state, which of course was an incomplete process, because we were continuously saying, should we not go into Hindu colonies and do the same? I mean, why should this assertion or this questioning or the demand for its repeal of this horrible citizenship amendment just be done by Muslims? I mean, I fully agree. There is no doubt about it, except that remember that the fight has to happen on the streets and with the Indian state, which is using its tools of ED and CBI and income tax against all the people who are stepping out, So you've got to fight it all together, which again doesn't deter me from saying that this fight is not to be done. And I
so sorry.
agree
This is
that,
I'm sorry.
I agree that the burden has to be on the Hindu community, and we have to do it. Whether you believe in it or not, but that doesn't mean the Muslim. It has to be done. That's all I'm trying to say. It has to be done.
If you don't mind, I'd like to, because we're quite far over time. So Asif, if you could give 1 minute.
Perfect. Just a minute. I will finish. See, when Shajil says the amount of radicalization in the Hindu in terms of number is much greater than what we saw in the Germany. I try to understand it. After the forces captured Germany, these German people, they came on road crying that we were looking at these horrendous episodes of Jews getting killed and murdered, and we could not do nothing. I know a day will come when the Hindu people will be on the road tearing, shedding their crocodile tear in the same way, but we don't need their tears that day. They need to come today. And in terms of number, the Hindu society radicalization is not a fringe. It is a huge number. Millions of people have been radicalized to the extent.
Asif, nobody has said fringe.
No one's saying.
Fact, it's a majority
I'm so sorry,
consensus.
Guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
this
it's a consensus.
This is a timing matter.
I'm
sorry to all of you.
I'm not saying it to you. I'm saying it to the Lord.
I'm so sorry. I have to. This is just
so the
question is settled, Asif. That question is settled. That we have a majoritarian.
If I could ask you both to wrap it up, please.
I do have to end
this session is like far over.
Just a minute. The honest of creating peace lies with the Hindu community. That's it. They need to come forward to establish peace and all the channels of communications of peace between the other groups.
That's perfect. We can wrap on that comment. I thank you so much for your thoughts. I'm sorry, Sharjilji, we're just really far over time. But I would like to thank all of you for your time today, especially for speaking. I know this is a very an issue that makes people very passionate, especially when it comes to protection of the Muslim community. So thank you so much to our panelists for staying so far over time to speak on this issue. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. If you weren't able to catch the full thing, you can go over to our Twitter or our YouTube channel, IMC, to watch the full thing. Please do share. And lastly, I would like to thank our co-sponsors for sponsoring this event: Genocide Watch, World Without Genocide, Indian American Muslim Council, Hindus for Human Rights, International Christian Concern, Jubilee Campaign, 21 Wilberforce, Dalit Solidarity Forum, New York State Council of Churches, Federation of Indian American Christian Organizations of North America, India Civil Watch International, Center for Pluralism, International Commission for Dalit Rights, American Muslim Institution, Students Against Hindutva Ideology, International Society for Peace and Justice, the Humanism Project and Association of Indian Muslims of America. Finally, I know we have another celebration coming up, so early Eid Mubarak to everyone, both in the United States and all of India as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of